Okay, good afternoon. I am here with Ty Unrau. Ty is a social science teacher and coach at Valley Center High School. You saw his presentation on Monday. Hi, Ty.
How's it going?
Thank you for being here with us. Ty is also a graduate of Bethel College, so he's happy to talk to some folks at Bethel again. Ty, I'm told you were a roommate of our own Tony Hoops, our athletic director. What was Tony like in college?
Oh, Tony was good. He was my roommate freshman year, and then I was also in the mods with Jason Artez, basketball coach. So those guys, Tony and Jason, I talked to them, about every week or so. We're always getting updates and sharing advice and stories. Just to always love to see the success that they're bringing to Bethel College, and I was really excited to do this. And I talked to Tony a little bit about it, and just so excited to be able to give back something to the Bethel community.
Good. Yeah, I'm so glad to have you speak to us. I think it's a really interesting and timely topic, so appreciated what you have to say. I have some questions from students that they've submitted, so we'll jump right into that. How do you handle people who don't follow the suggestions you showed us?
Yeah, I mean, you get that a lot. I think that the way things are kind of set up with, everybody has access to a platform. And, we're always kind of taught sometimes that, the loudest argument is the best argument. And you're going to run into people that will be very extremely opinionated about the topic. I always, when something like that happens, and we see that a lot in our classrooms too, you try to pause, you listen, you still nod. You don't necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily provoke. I would say something like, well, have you considered this? Or do you think there might be a possible reason why somebody might feel this way? So you kind of use statements like that, not necessarily going and saying like, well, I heard this and I heard this and this site said this. I would just kind of pause, listen to kind of what they're saying, and ask a question that's not necessarily a provoking question, but just maybe a clarifying question or something that leads to possibly some empathy. I know that's really something that we struggle with a lot, understanding where people come from. So that's the kind of the initial advice that I would have is don't provoke, ask maybe a clarifying question or something that would be, have you considered this?
Thank you. Where would you consider that the problem of this social discourse problem that you talked about, where does it stem from? Do you have any thoughts on that? Well,
I think it's really easy for everybody to communicate behind a computer screen. I talked about in my lecture about not necessarily going online. It's really easy for us to respond and have zero connection to the people we are responding to, and all about the roast. And that's easily done on social media. I think that everybody kind of has a go-to news network that they get their information from, and they believe that for the most part that's the way it is. And I think it's so much easier now to get that message out, to share a picture, to share a meme, to go at somebody. And I think that's part of the problem. That's kind of the divide that we're seeing grow from 2004 to the present, with that information that I shared.
Speaking of, you mentioned sharing certain news sources. What media sources do you trust for unbiased info? Do you have any tips?
So I knew that question was going to come. I knew it. I kind of have a rotation of like 5 to 10 places. I mean, everybody has information on their phone. They have access. You can kind of set up your favorites on what news you want to look at. You know what? There's some really good nonpartisan news sources out there. I like Reuters. I like places that don't have a lot of advertisements or different things like that. USA Today pops up with some good stories, but you still have to kind of look at both sides. I kind of like to do something where if I see something like on a CNN I like to go over to Fox News to see how they would be covering it. So kind of verifying, going back and forth. NPR I thought is a good source. I know they lean a little bit more liberal, more recent. A lot of times now you can go on to any of your social medias and you can follow, say you're on Instagram, you can follow certain ones, and it seems like you have to be careful just looking at just one source. So yes, I like Reuters, I like USA Today, I like NPR, but I also like to go to CNN and Fox News just to see how they are both covering the same event.
Good, thank you. Question about generational differences. How are members of the younger generation going to connect better with an older generation? Many parents or others assume that my generation is not informed enough to have an opinion, even if we've done the research.
Yeah, I think it's important to share experiences, to have kind of a story of where you're coming from. I talk a lot with my students about, understanding each other, that we all come from different backgrounds, different families, different values, different religion. We follow different social medias, different things like that. I think it's important to understand where we're coming in and what our purpose is for having a conversation first. And as far as connecting, I think just being open to something other than what a stereotype would be for that group. Not everybody falls into that conservative, cookie cutter area or liberal. It's okay to be a young person and be conservative. It's okay to be an old person and be liberal, or the other way around. And I think it's important that we don't just judge based on those stereotypes that maybe we've learned over time.
What would you say, I have a couple questions along these lines. What would you say to students who don't feel like they identify strongly with one side or the other, but feel pressure to take a really strong position?
Oh, they're feeling pressure. So it's really important to know that you don't have to be the same political party as your family. You don't have to be the same political party as your friends. I would think that even on our teacher hallway here, we have a lot of people that disagree about politics and different stances on things, but we all come together and we coexist, and we're part of a PLC of teachers that care about each other and care about the kids here. It's okay that you might not have those beliefs of certain people, but that's what makes us better and can learn from things and grow. I think that it's okay to evolve in your political views. I know, my time at Bethel, there's different viewpoints that I had then that, you learn new information now, you move forward, you adjust, you fact check, you source things, you ask questions. I think it's okay. And we shouldn't put pressure on people to feel a certain way. Be open to some compromise, some common ground, because there is common ground between the parties. There's been that before, and that's how you govern. You come to compromises, and I think you don't have to compromise your entire viewpoint on things, but you can at least understand where people are coming from.
What do you do when conversation quickly turns to who you're voting for in the upcoming election, and then it becomes really difficult to have any civil discourse after that?
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily have to answer the question. As a teacher, my students, we started school last week. I had a student come up to me and ask me, "Are you liberal or conservative?" And you know what? The response there is, I'm a teacher here. I'm going to provide you with unbiased information from both sides of the political spectrum. And if somebody comes up to you and asks you, if you're a voter, I think it's okay to be honest. I think you can still be honest with them, but understand that I like these things about this candidate. I don't like this about them as well. It's kind of our two-party system. I think you can say some character things that you like them, or you can talk about, just a general policy. I think it would be unfortunate if somebody would not want to be, associated with you or a friend with you, if based on who you voted for. I think that there's more to our 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 personality than who we vote for. It's about, you can agree on basic things like, human rights and certain values. I think those are common that should be common between all people. And I think it's okay to be open, and yeah, that would be unfortunate if people would be turned off by who you vote for.
I have a couple questions from different sides of the same issue, and I think this is a tough one, but relevant to a lot of people. Do you have any advice on how to have civil discourse with someone, even if I feel strongly that their political views are inherently incorrect or even immoral? And folks have brought this up around Black Lives Matter, both from the perspective of somebody who feels that the other side is being inherently racist or immoral, and from the perspective of somebody who has been told that their beliefs are inherently racist or immoral and is trying to figure out how to have that conversation still.
Yeah, and we get that a lot here, as far as, students that will have some outbursts that are extremely inappropriate. I think it comes with, even no matter how old you are, you need to be continually learning and improving. I think there's a lot of stuff that a lot of people are becoming aware of, especially since this summer, this time in quarantine, having a chance to read more, being more socially conscious, reading about what it means to be an anti-racist. I think that's important steps that, we're starting to take in education. I think it's important stuff that we're going to start doing, education at home with your children. Having difficult conversations, and not necessarily, I wouldn't say we shouldn't have to accept certain things that are coming, especially when it turns to a hateful discussion or something that's extremely disrespectful. I think you have a right to come back at that with a statement, not necessarily something that would, put somebody necessarily, you don't want to embarrass anybody in person, but I think that there's a time to have a conversation in a private moment, especially if it's with a colleague or somebody that, say it's a student that has some type of, outburst that is extremely inappropriate. I think best practice is to handle that, that difficult conversation in a timely manner, not embarrassing them in front of somebody, but sharing a little bit more perspective about that. That's a very difficult question, but I think that's the best answer that I can come up with there of how to handle that situation.
It is a difficult question. Yeah. Yeah. And it's definitely one students are thinking about.
And I'm sure that that's something that you're dealing with on a college campus on a daily basis too. And it's something that we're going to be dealing with more and more here in public education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. To follow up on a different angle that came up a little bit, but is maybe a similar question from a different side. If your belief has been called extremely immoral, an example would be abortion, for instance, and you're a pro-abortion or abortion rights advocate, how do you approach a conversation with somebody who believes that your side is inherently immoral?
Yeah, so, pro-life, pro-choice conversations, debates. What we know is what we know as far as seeing people protest. I mean, you have every right to protest peacefully, and the First Amendment protects that right. And we've seen protests go on at different, clinics. I mean, that happens all over the country. There's the March for Our Life that goes on in Washington, D.C. And people have every right to protest. I think sometimes it's unfortunate that it does get extremely heated and violent at times. We kind of talk about, and I'm not afraid to address this with our students. This gets into it with the death penalty as well. we had those conversations here. Anytime that you are having a conversation like that, it's important to allow for, make sure it's fact-based with talking about things, but also listen to the perspective and say, you know what, I may not agree with you because of religious reasons, because of personal reasons, but I do understand where you're coming from. And try to work towards, is there anything that you can rule is common ground there. I wouldn't get into a shouting match. Nothing ever good comes from a shouting match with that. You can still be engaged. We can still get something out of the conversation, but it shouldn't ever go to that level. And when it does, when you feel it going to that level, that's a time to to be quiet and just kind of take a time out and just pause, because anything after that, you never do anything good when you're angry. The same thing goes with a conversation like that, because and I can take the temperature of our classroom too. When you can tell that students are getting very anxious, maybe my temperature is going up too as an instructor. That's a time to pause, to refocus where we need to go with this. That's kind of the best advice there.
Appreciate that. Again, it's a hard question. That's a great answer.
Yeah.
One more question I'll ask before we sort of wrap it up. Do you have any tips for specifically talking with family members whose perspectives are different than yours, especially where some relationships may have already been damaged?
Yeah, it's Thanksgiving, it's coming up, Christmas time, family's all going to get together. I've shown in class sometimes the Saturday Night Live clips of the family coming together, and then there's always some angle. Kids are coming back from college, new experiences, new things, new values, or new beliefs, new friends, coming home and having those conversations. Those conversations have had those with my family too. I've had those conversations with my friends. I've had those conversations with Mr. Hoops and Mr. Artez. What's great about it is, it's okay I wouldn't jump right into that at the dinner table. That's not necessarily a thing to do. I wouldn't do that on a first date. I wouldn't, there's times for that. I would say that the best practice is to, because obviously current events are going to come up. It's going to happen. I would say that it's okay for you to share some initial thoughts on it, but don't necessarily be judgmental of what is being said, because there's reasons why, and we need to do a better job of understanding why people may have some views on this. And a big thing that I mentioned I want to talk about is the filter bubbles that we have in our social media, because that's just confirming some of the bias. And if somebody is continually at the dinner table quoting something from a certain source over and over again, you might want to maybe bring to their attention something like the filter bubbles, because that's something that we could all agree on is something that is impacting both liberal and conservative people out there, and it's just confirming our biases. So I would try to go with some indisputable information to help the conversation, so it's not just one person saying this, one person saying this, and just not going anywhere. There's something that they can agree on. That, oh yeah, well, there's some bias in there with that, and that's contributing to the problem.
It's great. And I think that's a great place to wrap up for now, Ty. I'm sure there are lots more conversations that could be had. But thank you so much for speaking to us. And you listed your contact information in the presentation. So if students have questions, or faculty or staff, community members have questions, they can reach out to you. So
Anytime,
thank you so much again, Ty.
Thank you.
All right.